Were you ever that 1 in 1 million? If so, what's your story? I'm a 19-year-old male. In August of last year, I was driving with my sister when suddenly her face turned cold. "Gavin, your eyes are yellow," I remember her saying. I quickly pulled down the passenger's mirror, and to my horror, 2 yellow eyes radiated back at me. Fast forward, I spent a month being sick. The initial diagnosis was hepatitis A. Went back to the doctor, nothing was better, things were worse in fact. Was sent to the then to the liver transplant unit at UCSF. By this point my eyes had turned muddy orange, and my pee was the color of a mahogany tree. Anyways, the team of liver doctors at UCSF managed to save my liver. I was diagnosed with autoimmune hepatitis. Oh, and my eyes are white again. Not me, my wife. We lived in Jacksonville, Florida. She rarely gets sick, but has mild insomnia. Around Wednesday, she had a low fever and complained of aches and sweats at night and trouble sleeping. That weekend she wanted to see the doctor. I told her she probably had the flu, just wasn't used the aches, and she always has trouble sleeping, but if she was still feeling bad Sunday we'd go to a clinic. Saturday night she couldn't sleep, so we made an appointment for Sunday afternoon. But on our way there, sure enough she's feeling better. Doctor checks her out. She's feeling fine now, no fever. He says she probably had meningitis but is recovering. I'm due to go on a business trip to California the next day, Monday, and ask him if he thinks it's fine I go. He says, yeah, no problem. That evening, wife is eating and laughing and all is good. Monday morning I leave early. That afternoon, my neighbor calls and lets me know my wife was wandering in the street in a delirium. My wife didn't know where she was, so the neighbor drove her to the I book a flight home that night. The hospital checks her out. She has a fever, her blood cell count is in the basement, and she is completely out of it mentally. They are not sure what's wrong, and a bunch of specialists start descending on her. I have to fill out a bunch of paperwork on her medical history, where we've been, etc. They think maybe it's some weird autoimmune disorder. Not good. She gets a bunch of transfusions and put on a cocktail of meds while they figure it out. Third day in the hospital, the infectious disease guy comes in. Blood parasite. Maybe tick-borne. She'd been to the Midwest recently. Colder caught it if she went walking in the woods or a park. Next day he comes in. Figured out the parasite. Why didn't you tell me she left the country? Huh. She hasn't. Well, she has malaria. Malaria. I thought you couldn't get that in the US. You can't. You need to go home and bring me her passport. What the hell? I retrieve her passport. CDC comes, does a whole case study on her, which they wouldn't release to us. Mosquito traps set up around the neighborhood. Mysterious vans start driving by spewing clouds of stuff. My wife stays in the ICU for a week, but recovers just fine. If you look at the 2010 CDC infectious disease report you'll see a discussion of malaria and how the 20th number of cases all are related to people recently returned from endemic areas, except for one woman in Duval County, Florida who received it from a cryptic vector. Edit. TLDR. Neighbor found my wife wandering in the street, took her to her. Turns out she got malaria from a cryptic source. Found a CDC malaria surveillance report from that year. Case 2. In November 2010, a woman aged 31 years sought treatment at a hospital emergency department for fever, severe headaches, nausea, vomiting, and malaise. She was admitted to the ICU for severe hyponatremia, thrombocytopenia, tachycardia, borderline splenomegaly, and epistaxis. Both the hospital and CDC confirmed a P. falciparum severe malaria infection with approximately 10% parasitemia. She was treated with oral quinine, clindamycin, and oral doxycycline, and recovered successfully. Probable routes of transmission were investigated. The patient stated that she had not traveled outside of the United States during the preceding 2 years, and had no history of malaria. In 2008, she traveled to Nicaragua, and stated that she had received malaria chemoprophylaxis at the time of her trip. She reported no history of blood transfusion or fourth drug use. Mosquito trappings conducted around her home in Florida revealed no Plasmodium infected mosquitoes and no additional malaria cases in close contacts or persons residing in the area near her home. The origin of the infection remains undetermined. When I was 14 years old, I woke up one day with heavy stomach cramps. We called the hospital, and they told us that I probably have a stomach flu and should go to the doctor next morning. After one of the worst nights ever, vomiting and sleeping next to the toilet, we went to the doctor. I had a fever of 40°C and was aching a lot. The doctor told me I had to go to her and have it checked out because she thought my appendix was inflamed and causing the pain. We went to the and I stayed in the hospital for about 2 weeks, but they couldn't find anything. They treated me with broad-range antibiotics, and after 2 weeks I was feeling a bit better, and they told me to go home and recover. The night I got back from the hospital I went to bed and started hallucinating that I lived in a retirement home and that pirates were coming to steal our food. So I was flailing around trying to fend off pirates when my mother came in and asked what all the fuss was about. I told her what was going on, and she looked at me like I had summoned a devil. She took my temperature and she instantly took me to the again. I had a 41°C fever. When we went back to the hospital I got treated immediately for inflammation and they did a wide range of tests again. They saw that something in my body was inflamed, but they couldn't find it. I stayed in the hospital for about 2 more weeks when they finally found what was going on. My appendix was inflamed and burst the night I was having the hallucinations, but on all the scans they couldn't see my appendix. The doctor told me that if I came in 2 days later I would have died because of the pus flowing in my body. Apparently there is a 1% chance of all the appendix cases that the appendix is so stretched out that they couldn't see it on the scans, or that the area was so inflamed they didn't see it. So after staying on antibiotics for about 2 more weeks they finally removed my appendix and all the pain was gone. I stayed in the hospital for over 4 weeks just because of my appendix and my bad luck on being that 1%. How I met my wife. I'm from the Netherlands. She is from the US. We met in Israel. It was my first weekend in Israel. Decided to go on a pub crawl to meet some people and have fun. As I'm buying the ticket my now wife walks up to the counter to also buy a ticket. The girl working there introduces us. We hit it off the first night, but I'm leaving in 2 days to stay with friends of friends in the middle of the desert for 3 months. 2 days after I leave I lose my phone. Don't have any way to get back in touch with her. I had little money and could stay/work with the people in the desert. But I kept thinking about her, so after a week I say I'm leaving. Take the next bus, goes 3 times a week at 5 AM and then a train to Tel Aviv. I had no idea how to find her, where to stay, and very little money. I email a couple hostels to find a work/stay agreement. Those jobs are very popular and usually planned months in advance. I get an email back when I arrive in Tel Aviv. I can come in for an interview because they have a spot. This is already ridiculously lucky. Right after the interview and dropping of my belongings, I went back to the first hostel to see if they would give me information. They wouldn't give me anything. Now I'm at a loss. Tel Aviv is a city of more than 500,000 people. I don't know anyone and have little more than the clothes on my back. Kind of defeated I start wandering around/exploring the city. After a couple hours I get hungry and decide to treat myself to a restaurant. I'm well out of the tourist area and find a place that's almost empty and rather cheap. I sit down, order a drink and something to eat. As I get my food I see my now wife walking past the restaurant. She sees me, I see her. I'm literally dumbstruck and just kind of grin and wave. Remember how I lost my phone? She didn't know that and just thought I ignored her. She waves and keeps walking. I throw like 200 shekels, way too much, in the table and sprint after her. Explained, and the rest is history. No sure about the odds on this one, but I survived a non-survivable plane crash. I was on an old PO2, famous for being very safe and uncrashable, on a tour of the desert in western China. When I was like 7, my father's friend who hosted me and piloted the plane didn't survive, but somehow I got out with a concussion and apparently passed out for almost a day in the middle of the desert, in the wreckage of the crash, 50 kilometers from the town/airport. On the edge of the desert. The people who found me were some tree planters. They plant greens in the desert to protect towns from sandstorm. A lot of people live in these desert towns in China do this. found me on their way picking up a shipment, and the only reason they looked was BC they were making a bet on how fast the egg would cook in the sand, and went off the road to test. Edit. First thing first, according to legends, 15 minutes, I never tested it though. So, according to my dads, the theory that I might have lived was because the plane was mostly made out of fabrics and wood. So when the plane crashed, the front half collapsed and took the majority of the impact. Though I got knocked out, I was probably covered under the wreckage, and in the shades, it cooled me off enough to survive for a day or so. I was so freakishly allergic to ant and bee venom as a child that a single sting from a single little common black ant put me into anaphylactic shock. When my allergist was preparing to start immunotherapy for me, he found that the in-office lab equipment wasn't sensitive enough to measure the infinitesimally small amount of allergen with which to start my titration, so he had to send a sample of my blood to Johns Hopkins so that their lab could determine how much to give me. I did immunotherapy for several years to reach an immune response level at which it would be safe for me to basically exist in a non-frozen climate. Good news, though, I'm good now. I've had a few run-ins with ants and wasps since my immunotherapy in my body didn't freak out and shut down, and research indicates that if it hasn't done that after this long, I'm probably safe for maybe forever. I don't have EpiPens, and I'm not overly afraid of ants or bees. Edit. Whoa. Overnight response. Thanks for the silver. To answer a few questions. I live in Florida. I'm not outdoorsy, but stinging things are everywhere. It is, in fact, the Australia of North America. No, my parents would not move me to the frozen tundra to be a nomadic reindeer herder at my behest. Little black ants do, in fact, sting. Several Lasius subspecies have stingers and venom. When an ant bites you, that's using their mandibles and does not deliver venom. When an ant stings you, that's using their needle and delivers the pain juice. Most ants do one or the other. Fire ants do both at the same time. I did some research a while back and found an academic paper that indicated that if I haven't had a reaction after this many years, the likelihood that I ever would again is vanishingly rare. I wish I could find it again right now, but I'm already late getting ready for work, so if I find it later I will post it. I feel completely safe having a cell phone instead of an EpiPen. I was actually homeless for 4 years between 19-23 years old. As silly as it sounds, I used to earn some extra money at the time by helping around in a UGIO tournament. It was my biggest hobby when I was younger and was something I felt confident about. I also didn't have a passport or a bank account, so I couldn't get a normal job, UK. Anyway, so at the time I was stuck not earning enough money without a passport, a bank account, or a real job. In the UK you won't get hired by 99% of companies if you don't have a passport to prove you have the right to work. So one day I got a phone call from a studio asking if I played UGIO and would consider myself a geek, also if I wanted to be in a TV show. They said they would send me to another country as part of it. Being homeless, the biggest problems is being bored, so naturally I said yes, but told them I don't have a passport. No problem, we'll get you one straight away and pay for it ourselves. I ended up on a show called Geeks that you can still watch on Channel 4 Odd. Because I got this passport I was finally able to get a job, a bank account, and finally a house. Now I'm looking after my 10-month-old daughter who's playing while I type this. So UGIO saved me from being homeless. I might be an in characters. TLDR, was homeless until a TV company gave me a passport allowing me to get a job and a house because I played UGIO. Edit. This blew up more than expected, so here are some answers to some questions. Also thanks for the gold and silver, guys. How did you have a phone? I had a cheap brick phone that would run on battery for a week. Think old Nokias. I used to charge in my local library in Peckham, London. How did I help in UGIO? I was a judge for the tournaments. They're a referee for the game. How did the TV company found out about you? I was a judge for the game, basically a referee. The TV show was looking for geeks with different hobbies, and they found out about UGIO. After, assume a Google search, they found the person who ran my local tournament to recommend different players and people, and she recommended me. Why do you need a passport? So in the UK you need a government picture ID and a national insurance number, like social security number, in order to prove you're allowed to work in the UK. I have migraines that cause me to go part or near completely blind, so can't drive due to the risk. So don't have access to a driver's license's ID, leaving me only with a passport. Edit 2. I'm getting some people who are a little doubtful that it can be so hard to get a job while homeless or to get I.D. and are shocked it's taken me long to get out. What's important isn't what you know about the world right now. What's important is what I knew about the world as 19-year-old that just left school. Think back to that age and honestly ask yourself how easy it would be to get a job without a bank, an home/address, I.D. or experience of anything. Of course now as a 27-year-old I'm armed with so much more knowledge to find a way out. Edit 3. Some people have pointed we out that you can get a job without a photo ID as long as you have a birth certificate. This is true from what I've researched, but isn't common practice from what I had experienced at the time. I wish I could aim this knowledge back to the past, but cannot. Edit 4. Thanks for all the love and support. I'm trying to reply to everyone, but the amount of comment are really overwhelming. If I don't message back, I'm sorry. I lived in Florida for the first 18 years of my life and spent most of my free time outdoors, fishing, camping, what have you. The summer before my junior year of high school I found myself out hiking nearby by my home with a buddy. We were stomping around in some clay deposits inside of a little ravine. Even minimal geographic relief is dramatic in a place as flat as the Gulf Coast when it started to Florida rain. For those of you who can't relate, imagine a torrential downpour. Our minds immediately jumped to the exciting possibility of a flash flood raging through the crevasses we were exploring. In an effort to make our day more exciting and not take any chances, we began to climb vertically out of the canyons versus take the lengthy path out of it horizontally. We got to the top, put our feet on the ground, and did pull up. As I stood up I felt the ground underneath me squirm. I had stepped on a snake. I screamed and kicked the snake that was latched onto my foot off me by reflex. As an Eagle Scout, I immediately recognized the red on yellow pattern as the snake slithered away and knew it was a coral snake. We rushed home, drove to the hospital, and was seen. The doctors informed my parents the nearest Antivan Inn was a 3-hour helicopter ride away. The first symptom, lung failure, would occur after 2 hours. My parents called my friends and family and we all spent time together without me knowing my fate. My friends and family arrived and subsequently left together. My parents turned off the lights and we prayed together. Around 2 hours after being bitten, a nurse came into our dark room with gurney to collect my dead body. I asked the nurse has there been any developments. To her surprise, the doctors came in, shocked I was alive, told me it was a dry bite and that I should remain whatever religion I practiced. TLDR, I was bit by a coral snake. The doctors told my parents I was going to die. I survived. Edit. I just woke up, but I'll try to answer some of your questions before classes. 1. The 1 in 1 million is mainly getting bitten by the snake in the first place, but also subsequently surviving. 2. I'm Christian, Lutheran, just in case you were curious. No idea on the actual numbers, but I was born with 12 fingers. Identical extra digits on each hand. Edit. This blew up, so some backstory. I no longer have the fingers. My parents elected to have them removed shortly after birth. There was a video of when everyone found out, but my aunt has lost it over multiple moves. The fingers were functional and well behaved, as if they were part of the intended 10. I have a scar on each pinky from where they were removed. As an extra fun fact, my older sister had 2 extra toes that did not actually grow and show. They found this out in high school when she broke her foot and they went in for x-rays and found that she has extra bones in her foot that just never grew out into the toes. Edit 2. Sorry everyone, I posted this then went to bed. Couple common questions. No, I'm not from Alabama or the South at all. The fingers were old, worked and bent and functioned normally. They had bones, muscles, tendons, blood vessels. My hand is shaped completely normal. The fingers were like a double pack of Twix where they are side by side. The only thing that it would not have been able to do was move sideways very far, as there was not a lot of webbing between original pinky and extra pinky. Fun fact #2. This all comes from my dad's side of the family. My dad is born with 2 extra teeth than my sister and I have different moms. I'll try to answer any other questions that I did not cover in this. Well, I just woke up to a ton more questions. My parents decided to remove them to basically just save a child the hardship of being made fun of, which I fully understand. Kids can be cruel, and I'm sure having 12 fingers is just ammo for them. The fingers were removed by being tied off, as others have mentioned from similar situations in the thread. And no, I don't have any proof other than the scars, but they are tiny. The bigger of the two just looks like a tiny mosquito bite on my left pinky. The right one looks the same, but is not raised. Also, this is now by far my most upvoted comment, and now I'm going to be known as the 12 finger guy on Reddit. Over 2k comments. I imagine this won't be seen, but whatever. Been waiting to post this somewhere. I survived earlier this month from hypothermia by walking with my brother in -40 with wind chill to the liquor store. We were already drunk a bit and never checked the weather. Got the bottle, headed back to chill in the fort, but I passed out. He ran to grab my dad and wake him up to get the truck. I was probably passed out for 10 minutes whilst they found me, dragged me into the truck, and to the hospital, where the doctor said I didn't have a chance, and my father should be waiting for the call. I remember I woke up with the doctor shoving a big ass breathing tube in my throat, but I couldn't breathe. I was restrained to the bed trying to take it out, and I remember a nurse saying, "Breathe," and I did, once every 5 seconds, until the doc finally said take it out, and he did. I gasped for life when they took it out, so relieved. I remember I looked at myself in a gown hooked up like a robot, wires connected to me, and 3 machines around me, and like 6 people in the room. Then the alarms on the machines went off, and I blacked out. They monitored me for 8 hours, until I was stable. I died in cardiac arrest for about less than 5 minutes, could be less. I was revived successfully, and monitored closely. I woke up a day later, seeing my mother and the brother. However, I was so high on morphine I think, that I mumbled a few words, and smiled at mom, until I passed out. I faking survived. I honestly am glad I survived. My hands got frostbite really bad, but it's normal now. This happened on the 10th, and I'm recovering, with a new lease on life. Edit. Thanks for the kind comments. It's been hard going on from this, but I'm trying hard to keep myself together. I still don't know how to feel about the situation, like I should be upset, or sad or something. I'm not. Just really unsure of the whole situation. All I know is I need to get my life together. I could be pitiful and look for sympathy, but I'm past that. I'm going forward now. Life is short, and I gotta make the best out of it. Not sure if it's 1 in 1 million, but it's pretty rare, so I'll write about it here. I have a medical condition called cyclic vomiting syndrome that causes frequent, unexpected bouts of nausea and vomiting. It's triggered by a multitude of different things. In my case, the worst offenders now seem to be a lack of sleep, stress/anxiety, or other sicknesses like the flu. When I was just a year old, I began to throw up uncontrollably around the same time every month. None of the doctors my parents took me to had any idea what was causing it, but my dad's sister, also a doctor, did some digging and noticed that I exhibited some very similar signs to someone diagnosed with this fairly newly discovered condition. My childhood was shaped by monthly visits to a nearby hospital to receive fourth fluid to prevent dehydration, where they knew me by my name and my trusty green bucket. I can recall a number of my own birthday parties and summer camp sessions that had to be cut short due to the occurrence of a dreaded episode that put me back in the hospital. One of my fondest memories of elementary school was my teacher having my class call me to sing happy birthday, as I had gotten sick during my birthday party the day prior. As I grew older and life and school became more stressful, I missed upwards of 30 days of school per year, and for fear of being labeled, no one but my close friends and my teachers knew the reason why. Even to this day, as a college student, while I have begun to grow out of the condition as some do, I have no more stomach pain during episodes, and much less frequent vomiting, but just as frequent nausea. My condition still hangs around, causing me to miss class around once a week. But man, I do my best to push through it. When I'm not feeling like I wanna throw up, I'm just a normal, fully functioning young adult. That's all I ever wanted to be growing up, normal. I'm never fully going to get there, but that's okay. For anyone facing a chronic illness like me, all that matters is that you make the best out of what you have. Never be afraid of being judged, because if someone judges you for something you have no control over, they are not worth your time, energy, or thoughts. If anyone shares my condition, or wants to know more about it, feel free to ask. I wrote this more for myself as I've been struggling a little bit lately at school, and needed some reassurance, but I'd be super happy if this touched someone else. Thank you for reading. This probably won't make it very high up, but my parents loved telling the story of how I shouldn't have been born. My mother and father were both in previous marriages and had divorced. My dad had 3 kids and my mother had 1. In order for my mother to get pregnant, she went through about 7 years of reproductive therapy before my sister was finally conceived. Fast forward to my parents' relationship. My dad got a vasectomy. Combined with the fact that my mother was 40 with a handful of medical and reproductive issues, conceiving a child should be damn near impossible. My parents thought the same thing, so they didn't really take any other precautions, and my mother didn't try to have a pregnancy-friendly lifestyle because she assumed that a child would never happen. My mother smoked cigarettes, not sure of the amount, but probably half a pack each day, if I had to guess. She also worked around hazardous chemicals, the kind where you have to wear hazmat suits when working with them. She also went to amusement parks and had an occasional drink. My parents did nearly everything possibly to prevent and terminate a pregnancy, some intentional, some unintentional. My mother didn't even find out she was pregnant until about 5 to 6 months in, so there were 2 trimesters where she did things that a pregnant woman should not be doing. All things considered, I should've never even existed. And even by the slim chance that I did exist, I should've been born with some kind of mental or physical disability. There are hundreds, probably even thousands, of studies of why women shouldn't smoke and drink while pregnant. Studies of women over 35 having higher chances of having a kid with Down syndrome. Amusement parks have warnings about pregnant women not going on certain rides. But even if I did have a disability, it was too late to abort mission 6 months in. So by some weird miracle, life decided to say fuck biology and poof my healthy brain and body into existence anyway. It's more of something that happened rather than something I am. IDK if this story really fits the question, but it's the only thing that comes to mind. About a year ago, I parked my car at the university campus parking next to my buddy's car, took a picture of both our cars, and went to class. An hour later, my phone rings. It's a police officer who got my number from university's help desk. He asks me to immediately come out to my car. I had a small amount of weed in my car, hidden well though, so my mind went directly to that. I could see my car from like half a mile away, and I saw about 10 cops surrounding it. Later I found out there were only 4 cops, 4 campus security and 2 guys dressed in black. When I got close to my car, they confirmed it was me, asked to look at my recent pictures, and confirmed that indeed I was the guy. They asked me to open my vehicle and started searching. Then they arrested me for intimidating someone. The whole way to the police station the cops kept telling me I had faked up. It was good that the cops arrested me because I faked up with a psychopath and I would have been dead if he would find me before the cops. I still didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. The questioning went on for 2 hours and they kept saying they had me on camera. I should stop denying I wasn't involved with this. Then, after 2 hours they allowed me to call my lawyer, but since I didn't have one, I called my dad who works 5 minutes away from the police station. He was there pretty quickly, and since he had all the details of the case, he was able to convince the cops and the psychopath that I wasn't involved in whatever they were accusing me for. That day I understood that a similar photo of what I had taken before I went to class was sent to someone who was being harassed and intimidated through Instagram. I had never parked my car next to my buddy's car like that, so I was quite sure the other photo was taken the same day during that 1 hour interval between me parking there and the photo being sent. The cops and university security said that there was no one else there during that 1 hour taking a photo, so maybe I sent it to someone, but I was sure that the photo I took never left my phone. The guy who was harassed called his dad the psychopath, and he was there to either beat me really bad or kill me. Luckily the security called the cops, and I was arrested, so the cops weren't talking out of their asses when they said I was better off arrested. The next day I went to campus security office and demanded to look at the camera. Except for me, only some girls are seen getting into a car and leaving. So we slowed the video down, and indeed, they stopped the car for about 5 seconds at the exact place the photo was taken. They were later called to the security office and accepted that they were the ones that did it. It still boggles my mind how my simple decision to take a picture of my and my buddy's cars almost landed me in jail. Ah, man. People might not believe me, but this is 100% true. My girlfriend had a child, and we had no idea she was pregnant at all. She's 5 feet 4 inches and 140 pounds. Not super skinny, but definitely not fat. She had not belly to tell it. When my son was born I looked back, and some attitude change made sense, and it made sense that she couldn't run, but otherwise she was 100% flat, never showed signs of pregnancy. I had just turned 21 6 days previous, and she was feeling really sick throughout the day. I had some buddies over to drink, and she felt sick. She lived with her parents at the time. She ended up going to the hospital. They told her she most likely had salmonella poisoning. After pulling blood, they told her she was pregnant, and a few minutes later told her she was in labor. Crazy thing is, 3 months previous, she'd gotten an IUD and passed the piss test, so they put it in. Because I was drinking with friends at home, I had no idea what was happening. She called me around 7:30 am to tell me, and I was shook in the most negative way possible. We had always agreed to never have a kid. I was freaking out. I hated this. I showed up. Her parents were of course awkward, but of course it was great experiences, as far as things you never expected and hoped would never happen could go. After a few hours at the hospital I left to take a shower and eat, spent about 30 minutes in a Taco Bell freaking out, and went back to go on with my life. I love my son. I never thought I'd be in this situation, but I'm so glad it am, no matter how hard it gets. I have a hypersensitivity to dextromethorphan. That's the active ingredient in cough syrup. I've never been one to experiment with drugs. I never liked smoking pot or drinking, and there is a long history of addiction in my family. I pretty much said fuck that shit from an early age. My friends, on the other hand, loved all that shit. I was around 18 when my buddies started robber tripping, is it still called this, on a consistent basis. For the stid, you drink a bottle of Robitussin and trip your balls off for 6 to 8 hours. Anyways, my friends did this constantly for months and they always bugged me to join in. Months and months of peer pressure, until I finally caved. I agreed to do it one time, as long as they shut the fuck up, and didn't ask me to do anything with them ever again. On a Friday, I go to a buddy's house and drink a bottle of this disgusting liquid. I sat around for an hour or two wondering if anything would happen, or if I was just going to feel nauseous for the rest of the night. Bam, I'm rolling around on the floor in complete confusion. Bam, I see my buddy in the corner staring at the ceiling. Bam, I'm in a recliner begging for sleep so this terrible feeling goes away. I wake up the next day and sit there for a minute, confused. It was like trying to think through pudding. I really needed to use the bathroom, but my legs wouldn't respond. I'm further confused. I slide my way out of the chair and army crawl to the bathroom. Slowly pull myself up onto the toilet, finish, and army crawl back to the chair. Wake up sometime later at the pridding of my buddies. I'm still extremely groggy and unfocused, but ask for help standing up. I cannot stand up on my own. While my friends find it hilarious, I'm getting more and more concerned. What the fuck was going on? Later on, the doctor would tell me of this hypersensitivity that a small percentage of people have. He would also tell me that I had essentially overdosed on drugs. Me, the guy who never tried anything, had OD'd and my hoodlum friends had not. Fan-faking-tastic. This high I had subjective myself to had lasted for an entire week. A few highlights of my dumbest self while under the influence of goddamn cough syrup. I drove even though I could barely walk, let alone function. Holy shit. I went to a job interview. I was offered the job, but turned it down and scolded the employer for offering me part-time hours. I got the gig full time a little later. A few days into this, I stalked around the house with a letter opener hunting vampires while making really weird noises. I'm glad I didn't stab anyone. I laid under the bushes out in front of the house for a few hours while it rained. When asked what I was doing, I replied hiding from Charlie. I unknowingly and without consent had my hand up a 15-year-old girl's shirt. Said girl had a huge crush on 18-year-old me. During the Super Bowl party, she ended up sitting next to me. As I was only able to focus on one thing, I didn't notice. Commercials come on and my attention is drawn to where my hand was. I turn to see said girl with a huge smile on her face. I remove my hand and tell her to go away. My friends laugh. The game comes back on and I watch. Commercial break. Same faking thing. I beg my friends to get this girl away from me, but they laugh because they're faking assholes. This continues throughout the game. It only ended when the girl I was seeing saw this transpiring at the Super Bowl party. She was there the whole time, but I didn't notice. When we locked eyes, the anger in her face was enough to get me up and into my car. I drove home. I shaved my dog. Side note. 15-year-old girl had been pursuing me for some time up until that point. Like, getting on top of me while I was sleeping over at a friend's house and trying to hold me down while grinding on me. Shit was faked up. After 7 days, I finally started to feel like myself again. 4 days of pure insanity and 3 more of what felt like sleepwalking. Tried to patch things up with girl I was seeing, but she thought I was full of shit and I didn't blame her. It was too stupid to be believable. So yeah, I don't take cough medicine anymore. Not 1 in a million, but when Quantum of Solace was released to my local theater on opening night, there was a big deal made of it, and the cinema decided to do giveaways by shooting prizes, free movie tickets, which were wrapped in Quantum of Solace t-shirts, and fire them from the mall rooftop using a t-shirt potato gun firing contraption. The grand prize was free movie tickets for a year. My group of friends had shown up early and saw the crowd gathering of maybe 1,000 people in the parking lot below and decided to join in. We thought it best to spread out. When the t-shirts started firing, I noticed I was catching a lot because I was surrounded by smaller kids. Anyway, I noticed how disappointed they were when none of them could catch anything, and I was holding roughly 10 wrapped up t-shirts in my hand. So I decided to start giving them away. My friend came through the crowd and asked what I was doing, so I explained it was just a bit of fun and what were the chances I would win free movies for a year anyway. I told him I would keep just one, so I took one out of the pile and stuffed it inside my jacket and have the rest away. Continued catching more and gave them all away. When it was all over, my friends and I gathered in a circle and the ones who caught a t-shirt won some free movie tickets. Then I proceed to open that one t-shirt I caught, and there was this large piece of paper in it. As I opened it, I read out loud, "Free movies for a year, holy shit." My friends couldn't believe I managed to snag the one t-shirt with the grand prize, especially after giving away so many. 2 things, both medical. 1. Growing up, I was a pretty healthy kid, except for developing Hashimoto's hyperthyroidism, but that didn't bother me much. Going into my 20s, however, my body seemed determined to self-destruct. First I developed type 1 diabetes out of the blue, then costochondritis, then pleurisy, then fibromyalgia, then gastroparesis, then chronic kidney stones due to a metabolic problem, then neuropathy. Although that was no surprise, I sucked at taking care of myself in those early years. So, when my gallbladder went bad, the night before a Lana Del Rey concert I would have killed to see, still bitter about that, I thought, okay, this sucks, but you remove it and you're done. So I got my gallbladder removed laparoscopically and went home to recover. Only, I wasn't feeling better. I was exhausted, and for some reason I was retaining a lot of water. I'm talking over 20 lbs. As 2 weeks went by, the doctor's office assured me it was just water gain from the surgery and not to worry. At one point, though, I literally couldn't go 5 steps without falling on a couch or chair. I went for my surgical follow-up, and my surgeon noted I looked pale. I started telling him about my weird symptoms, and he asked me some questions. His eyes grew wide, and he said he was sending me to the ER immediately. They admitted me to the tachycardia wing. I had no idea what was happening. First they drained 2 L of fluid from my lungs. Then they put me immediately on diuretics and other meds I don't remember. I was pretty out of it at the time. They were giving me Dilaudid on top of everything else. Eventually, a doctor came in and bluntly said, "You have congestive heart failure." I remember blinking, laughing, and saying, "But not like failure, right? Amazing the mental gymnastics you can do when you're terrified." "No," he explained. "You have congestive heart failure." I cried, but they reassured me this could be managed with medication and time. The doctor held my hand. My family came, and they calmed me down. Except for ending up with MRSA in my nose, had to be quarantined for a week or so. The rest of the hospital stay was pretty uneventful. So after I was stable I went home with new stretch marks from just how much water weight I gained, then lost, and new medication. I visited a heart hospital weekly at first, then got better, and went to monthly appointments, then every 2 months, then every 5. My progress was mostly steady and linear with only one dip in function. Curiously enough, after I broke up with my fiancée. Never underestimate the effects stress can have on your body. Last September, 2 years after the failure, I had an appointment. My cardiologist came in grinning. He told me, flabbergasted but happy as hell, that my heart was now normal. There had been no lasting tissue damage. My ejection fraction, basically how well your heart squeezes, was now considered normal. Although I'd have to stay on medication, I was effectively cured. He said it was so rare it was a miracle. He told me that when I was first admitted to the hospital, my ejection fraction was below 10%. They briefly put me on the transplant list and were pretty sure I would die. Somehow, though, I clawed my way back up to a healthy and normal heart. He told me I should try my luck in Vegas. 2. When I get sick, a flu, or whatever, my blood sugar can get a bit high, which is pretty normal. However, when I get really sick, well, this one time in particular, my blood sugar got so out of control I blacked out for 3 days. My mom found me on my floor, naked for some reason. My eyes were open, and I was panting, but I wasn't really there. I couldn't speak or move. She called the paramedics and they rushed me to the hospital. They confirmed I was in diabetic ketoacidosis, but something else is wrong. They run some tests and I come up positive for propylene glycol. The doctors asked my mother if I had been suicidal, if I could have ingested this myself. My whole family ended up tearing apart my room looking for possible poisons. They immediately sent the test results to Davis. I was worsening fast. I went into heart and kidney failure. I was in the ICU. I was intubated and sedated heavily, propofol, Precedex, fentanyl, and Versed. They told my mom I was critical. Basically, I was supposed to die. They decided to give me the propylene glycol antidote, even though a few doctors had talked to my mom about the ketoacidosis being the real issue at hand. It worked. In fact, the cardiologist in my first story was present when they administered it, and he said it was absolutely remarkable how quickly I improved. I was kept in the ICU and sedated, but I was coming out of the woods. They eventually lifted the sedation, despite how agitated I became. I went through insane withdrawals from being on those powerful drugs for so long, but I was coming back to life. And quickly. The doctors got the test results back. They said the test had been a false positive for propylene glycol. The bungled result, in fact, was a result of the chemical processes of diabetic ketoacidosis. So why did the antidote work? I wonder to this day what really happened. All I know is, there's 3 days that preceded the air trip, and I don't remember a minute of them. So I escaped death a second time, by the skin of my teeth. The air doc told me the acetone level in my blood was pretty far beyond the fatal limit, and it was nothing short of miraculous that I not only survived, but regained full organ function so quickly, within 2 weeks of leaving the hospital. He too told me I ought to try my luck in Vegas. TLDR, I have cheated death twice like a bad beach. I have a rare genetic disorder in the eyes called retinitis pigmentosa. I think only a little over 2,000 Americans have been diagnosed with it. It's a degenerative disease that slowly takes away your field of vision, and there's no way to correct it with any sort of glasses or surgery. I went to a ton of all different sorts of eye doctors, and while trying to explain it, they looked at me like what? Because they'd never heard of anything like it, and most tests showed nothing wrong. I think the simplest way to explain it is, take the middle cardboard part of a paper towel roll and put it up to your eye and look through it like you used to pretend you were a pirate when you were younger. That is basically what I can see in my right eye. My left eye's not as bad, but both are slowly getting worse over time. I'm apparently one of the luckier ones who still has my central field of vision at least, because the area that it spreads can be random. My doctor guessed I may be effectively blind by the age of around 50. I'm 25 now, so at least I still have a ways to go. There actually wasn't any sort of cure until a couple of months ago, I think. But it's about $800,000 as of right now. It's expensive, but for the longest time I figured I'd just have to deal with going blind. At least now there's hope for us, as well as many other people with other rare genetic disorders. This might get buried, but whatever. I witnessed what might be a literal once in a collective lifetime event involving a bad beat jackpot at a live poker table. TLDR, a guy accidentally folded what would be a bad beat jackpot winning hand. $10k for him. $5k for hand winner. $1k table share. Then the same guy won the bad beat jackpot 5 hands later. For you casino poker players out there, you know that's gotta be more than 1 in 10 million. Small background. A bad beat is when your amazing hand happens to get beaten by an even better amazing hand. The casino I was playing at had a minimum qualifying hand rankings of a full house, aces full of 10s or better, get beaten by quad 10s or better. I was playing $1 to $2 no limit hold'em with about 6 other players at a table when a relative newbie sits down. About 30 minutes later the new guy gets into a hand with another player, and the end result is the board showed a9. The other player made a $25 bet on the river and the new guy folds his hand and says, well, all I have is a full house, you must have an ace, so I'll lose. The other player said, as the new guy threw his cards into the discard pile, wait, what did you say? Turns out, the new player had JJ, aces full of jacks, and mucked his hand. The other player had quad aces, queen kicker. The pit boss gets called over. The rest of us at the table freak out, because the table share of the jackpot was $1k each, but there was nothing we could do. The guy had mucked his hand, and it was over. The dealer had permission to flip over his mucked cards to verify the player would have won the jackpot. The poor guy would have received $10k for having the losing hand. The other player would have received $5k for the winning hand. Literally 5 hands later, the same new guy, who we have been rubbing mercilessly for 20 minutes on how he cost himself $10k, gets into a hand with me and one other guy. We ended up all in after the flop, and here's how it went down. New guy has AA, I have K9, other player had questions. Flop is Q66. Turn is a Q, river is an A, new guy has aces full of queens, other guy has quad queens, and I have a busted flush, lol. The same new guy wins $10k, other guys wins $5k and me, and the rest of the table, win $1k each. We were collectively trying to figure out the odds of a bad beat qualifying hand happening to the same guy, at the same table, within the span of 5 hands. Bad beat jackpots can go for months without being won at a casino with 6 tables running full time. We couldn't wrap our heads around it, truly mind-boggling and definitely more than 1 in a million. When I was 16 and just learning to drive, I told my mom I was too tired to drive back from a music lesson. It was 5 o'clock traffic. She didn't believe me and told me to get in the driver's side or we wouldn't be going home. So, I did. We arrived at a 4-lane road, one of the busiest streets in the town, something I had never driven in my life. I asked her which way I should turn. She told me to turn left, so I started to, and then she said no, right. I froze. I didn't know what to do. Next thing I know, a truck rammed into the driver's side. They had bad brakes and were on their way to the mechanics. I smacked my head on the window. The car crumpled at my feet. The horn blared and wouldn't stop. I screamed. Emergency vehicles came. I'm pulled out of the car through the passenger side window. I hyperventilate. A stranger hugged me. I'm put on a stretcher and into an ambulance. I spent the afternoon waiting for tests, then carted into my own hospital room. My dad worked there. Everything is fairly hazy. Doctors told me something had chipped at the top of my spine. I needed to wear a neck brace for 5 weeks. We went to look at my mum's totaled car 2 days after. She had just paid the last payment on it the day of the accident. When the mechanics who assessed it for insurance saw me standing there, they were absolutely shocked. They said I must have a guardian angel, because they've never seen a car hit like this, and the person still standing. They said I should be paralyzed or dead. This is more like 1 in 1 billion. Though, the only thing I got out of it was an amazing story. I'll keep this brief. My name is John. My best friend's name is Caleb. Caleb's mom is hot. I dogged him about it, because that's what friends do. Caleb's mom's name is Donna. One night, Caleb and I were drunk at a karaoke bar. I turned in my song to the DJ, but instead of putting my real name, I put John Dunn, a portmanteau of my name, John, and Caleb's mom's name, Donna. The goal was to have the DJ announce to the bar that, up next is John Donna. And he did. And it was funny, to me. That was all well and good, until I go up to the stage. The DJ hands me the mic. I take the mic. That's when a woman approaches the stage and proceeds to take the mic from my hand. I politely ask her, "What the fuck, lady?" To which she replies, "Nice try, asshole. But I'm John Donna." I look at her, then look at the DJ, then look at my friend, who, BTW, did not see me write that name on the card, so therefore could not have set me up. I say, "Your name is John Donna?" She says, "Yes." She then instructs the DJ to show me her card, and there it was. John Donna, written right there on the card, and not in my handwriting. I have never met, nor heard of, anyone with that name. Even meeting someone with that name would be 1 in a million. But to meet someone with that name while I'm out with my friend Caleb, 1 in a billion. And to meet someone with that name while out with my friend Caleb, and for us to have clashed in the way we did, 1 in a trillion. Still to this day, the most star-aligned random as fact thing that's ever happened to me. This only happened yesterday, but here it goes. I've been collecting old photos and postcards for years. I buy them from estate sales, garage sales, flea markets, antique stores, literally anywhere and everywhere, and I have hundreds. I don't really know why I collect them, as they are complete strangers, but I find it fascinating, like a window into the past. So last night I randomly decided to reorganize my collection. I found this postcard in one of the boxes and I noticed that it is addressed to Kurt Benson, which is my uncle's name. So I sent my mom a picture of it, just because it was mildly interesting. She just happened to be with him at the time, so she showed it to him. I told her it was dated 1916 and signed by a name that started with an _E. She asks me what the address is. I can't really read it, but I can make out the word river and what looks like the beginning of Nebraska. I ask why, not really understanding what she was getting at. She tells me her grandpa, my uncle's namesake, lived in Wood River, Nebraska. I take a closer look at the address and sure enough, it says Wind River. My great-great-grandfather was Ena. It's hard to tell, but it's signed by an Ena. Anyways, my great-grandfather named Kurt Benson, who lived in Wind River, Nebraska in 1916, had a father named Ena. I believe this postcard is from my great-great-grandfather to my great-grandfather 100 years later. I buy it at an antique store. The front of the postcard is a photo of a group of people in a car. Back in that era it was common to have your personal photos printed onto thicker paper so that they could be mailed as postcards. My great-great-grandfather is possibly one of the people pictured. Kind of a long story, but crazy nonetheless. Was attending the Austin City Limits Music Festival with some friends, and another friend, let's call her Ashley, was arriving late, and said her and some of her friends would like to meet up, grab a spot together for Paul McCartney, the headliner that night. Ashley gives us the heads up that some of her friends are already in the festival, and she gave them my number to coordinate/meet up. About an hour before Sir Paul is set to start, I receive a text, "Hey, this is Matt, Ashley's friend. Where are you guys?" We proceed to exchange texts, detailing landmarks we are by to best meet up. They have trouble exactly locating us, so they suggest to meet us by the nearby bathrooms, and he is wearing an anti-social social club shirt. I walk over, and sure enough find two brothers, one in an ASSC shirt. I introduce myself, and we start exchanging pleasantries, and then they ask how I know Ashley. I explain that we knew each other when she lived in Dallas. She used to be married to a friend of mine, but we still keep in touch, yada yada yada. Both brothers look a little puzzled, say they never knew she was married, or that she ever lived in Dallas. The divorce was fairly newish, so I figured no harm no foul, as she might have not disclosed that to folks. I'm not fazed. What does faze me is when they say they knew her from a Boston area university that I know she did not attend. We finally start cross-referencing last names of Ashley, and sure enough we are dealing with two different Ashleys here. We then figure out the guy meant to text a number that was only one number off of my cell phone number. But the odds that two brothers from Boston who had traveled to Texas to attend ACL were texting a wrong number with the Dallas area code looking for their friend Ashley, and that this wrong number was actually at said festival and was anticipating correspondence from friends of an Ashley still messes with my head. All three of us stood there dumbfounded at the universe, shared a beer, and then went our separate ways. Hope this brothers had fun. Well, it started when I noticed something real funky going on with my vision at the mall. Went to a bunch of eye doctors and basically they told me it's not your eye that's the problem, it's something behind the eye. I pointy my brain. So my parents and I rush over to the ear to figure out what the heck is going on, and eventually I get a MRI. Next day they come over and tell me I had myself a pediatric stroke at the age of 14. A damn aneurysm in the back left part of my brain controls vision apparently. So while I was hospitalized they ran tons of tests, but didn't find squat. Go figure. The real puzzling thing was that they never found a reason as to why I had it. It's something like a 0.0000002% chance to have a stroke at that age, and the doctor said it was even less likely to not find a reason for it. Good news is that you're statistically less likely to have another stroke if they don't find a reason, so yay me. Anyway, I lost the upper right quarter of my vision, but other than that no real damage. Now I get the pleasure of stroke jokes, since I'm a one-stroke wonder, and I had a stroke of luck and yada yada yada, you get it. I was out late, drinking beer with friends at a bar, and I was feeling euphoric and super generous. My friends eventually leave, and I'm lonely, so I started chatting up and us outside the bar. I get super talkative after a few drinks. I ended up giving all my money to some homeless guys, and talked with them for a while about politics and their life stories. Finally I decide to go home, and knock the fuck out, before I give away my coat or something else my stupid drunk and overly generous self would do, but then I saw this twink, maybe 27 years old, in tears. He was walking aimlessly around with tears pouring down his cheeks and snot running from his nose. I stopped to give him a tissue. I carry them around b/c, you never know when you or someone else will need one, and I asked if he was okay. He broke down, clung to me, and started sobbing, which is a weird thing to do to a complete stranger, but I can tell he's really drunk and just needs a little help. I've been there. After crying into my shoulder for a minute he explains that he managed to lose his phone and wallet, while also forgetting where his hotel was. He had been walking around drunkenly for hours in the cold with no coat or anything, so I take pity on him and look up his hotel on my phone and it's literally right around the corner. LMAO. I kinda went into mother hen mode and lead this drunk ass twink to his hotel. Now I'm lower middle class and this hotel lobby just screamed rich. Fireplaces, many uniformed attendants, beautiful furniture, classy lighting. Later I looked it up, and one night there costs faking $500. Oh my faking god. The twink immediately starts complaining to the staff about how he lost his wallet, and how he was wandering around outside for hours in a t-shirt trying to find the hotel. He's whining and pouting and obviously inebriated and I'm kinda mortified. b/c I hate wasting employees' time with bullshit, and he wasn't exactly being nice or considerate to them. But these hotel workers knew how to deal with the ultra rich, that is ultra entitled, and they just nodded and told him exactly what he wanted to hear. I was impressed by the staff's incredibly respectful and professional response, to being whined at by a drunken idiot who was just psycho-babbling at this point. So by now I had done my job, he had found the hotel, and I was gonna leave, but to my surprise he invited me up to his room. I was still buzzed and still kinda worried about this dumbass drunk rich twink, so I shepherded his stumbling ass upstairs and to his room, and oh my god you guys, his fucking room, like. I felt like Shane Dawson reacting to Jeffree Star's mansion. There were super high ceilings, a huge bed, gorgeous floor to ceiling windows, and a faking plate of arranged berries. Let me repeat, a casual plate of arranged berries. We immediately start eating the berries and started chatting. Akira listened to him complain about this evening more. Apparently this dumb twink had taken his friend's private fucking jet to get to New York, where he then got really drunk in a helicopter ride and started blacking out. Apparently his friends just left him, or he wandered off. The details were fuzzy. We finished all the raspberries and he started taking off his clothes. I was kinda like, okay, this is weird as hell, but I'm gay, and I'm not entirely opposed to the situation. He's in his underwear and decides to draw a bath. I'm like, trying to give him his privacy, but he doesn't care at all, and he's not bad to look at either. Hey anyway, he manages to find his backup iPhone, which apparently he has B/C. Losing his wallet and phone are common occurrences for him. LMAO, what a faking mess. So like, he FaceTimes his friends and summons an Uber. I've been forcing him to drink water and I can tell he's getting more coherent. Then this faker pulls out some Versace bag totally filled with stacks on stacks of $100 bills. I had never seen that many bills before, and I'm totally awestruck. I'm gooped. I'm gagged, and as he counts out $1,000, he brags about how expensive the bag was, something stupid like $5,000, faking rich people. He then hands me $1,000 and says thanks for helping me out tonight. I'm motherfucking shook. My wig, snatched, my bussy, quivering, my pocket, full of $100 bills. I've never been paid this much at once before, and I honestly wasn't expecting it at all, but did I complain? Hell no, LMAO beach, you know I took that. So anyway, we go to the club his friends are at, and I feel like a street urchin among models. Everyone is white, thin, tall, and incredibly well dressed. They are the queer upper 1% and I feel woefully underdressed. Mind you, I'm lugging around my huge puffy coat, backpack, and my hair is a faking mess. But, the twink introduces me to his friends, and they praise me, and buy me drinks with their endless wallets full of cash, and all in all I had a wild magical night, and ended up going home with a hot guy, who might have given me herpes. I'll have to get tested, but the chances are apparently pretty slim. So yeah, that was my night last night. I'm $1,000 richer, and I might believe in karma now. Like after I was generous with the homeless dudes, this dumbass drunk ass ultra rich twink ended up being super generous with me. What goes around comes around, my dudes. TLDR, antibiotic caused rapid intracranial swelling earlier this year. My gastroenterologist decided he wanted to treat H. pylori that I have, which is typically non-symptomatic and majority of the world has, due to other GI issues, and started me on tetracycline antibiotic regimen to treat. Within the first day of taking the medication I was calling the nurse to report a weird feeling and being kind of out of it. I called her every following day very concerned about the meds, but they assured me I should continue taking since I can't stop mid-antibiotic. I took the meds for 5 days, and by day 5 I had developed a splitting migraine, was throwing up quite a bit. When I woke up with a migraine the next day I knew something was really wrong. I could hear a whooshing in my head/ears that wasn't on time with my heartbeat. I could hardly open my eyes due to photosensitivity in my left eye had abnormal blurry spots and began having these rapid mood swings that didn't make any sense to even me. I went to an urgent care center and the doctor acted like I was crazy and grabbed my head and told me I just had a tension headache. He rotated my occipital bones in my skull and sent me home. I decided to halt the meds on my own account because I really strongly felt they might be the culprit of these issues. I woke up with the same whooshing and migraine for a third day and ended up making the decision to go with my dad when he was going for his general vision checkup and had them take a look at my eyes. Luckily they took me seriously and did an extra retinal scan that showed I had papilledema, swollen optic nerves on both eyes. I went in for an MRI the next day where they confirmed that I had increased intracranial pressure due to an increased presence of spinal fluid on my brain. It had swollen up enough that I now have issues with my pituitary functioning, which I'm still dealing with months down the line. I've read dozens of studies and case studies at this time, and although I can find reports of people having intracranial swelling, it is always after they are taking the meds for months and then report symptoms. I'm a chronic worrier, so initially, when my mood started going all over the place and I was having these weird feelings, I felt like I was crazy or somehow inventing this situation for myself. It turns out I'm incredibly in tune with my body and when things are wrong. Now, 4 months down the road, I still hear that whooshing, big sign of too much pressure in your head, but luckily after a cortisol shot, lots of sumatriptan and a 2-week-long migraine, the migraine itself subsided, making the rest of the symptoms much more manageable. Once I caught a hummingbird. I'm a master of patience and interacting with wild animals, bunnies, birds, cats, etc. Only the small ones though. Anyway, this poor hummingbird got caught in our garage and was flirting about scared. I tried to use a stick to get it to go out the door, but it couldn't figure it out. So I used that same stick and coaxed the small bird to come down. It flitted down in front of me once, but I wasn't ready. I tried again, and it came down once more. I lightning quick snatched out and grabbed the hummingbird. Quickly I checked to see if I had hurt it, because it was impossible to time it so I wouldn't get its wings, but the bird was fine. Now I'm like super excited. I've caught a hummingbird with my bare hands. I gently hold the hummingbird and take a picture for proof. Unfortunately, that picture lies in the camera of my grandparents, who live on the East Coast, and I now live in Utah, so don't expect pics for a while. Anyway, I got show my sister, who is the only other person home, and after looking at the hummingbird I deduce that it is a ruby-throated hummingbird, copper feathers on its neck and green shiny ones on its back. A few fell off when I brought it inside, and I collected them, but I lost those showing off at school unfortunately. Man, I was bad at keeping stuff as a kid. Anyway, I eventually brought it outside and let it go. It sat on my hand for a secretary before flying free and fluttered around our pear tree a bit before flying off. Most impressive catch I ever made, and I did a good deed too. I went to Disneyland at about 12 years old, with my mom, little sister, my mom's friend and her daughter. We got free tickets by doing community service. About halfway through the day we finally arrived at It's a Small World. I fucking despise the ride. I've been on it twice beforehand, so I had no desire to get on the ride. Quick backstory. I used to watch The Girls Next Door. For those of you who don't know, it was a reality TV show starring Hugh Hefner and his closest 3 housemates at the time, Holly, Bridget, and Kendra. As an adolescent I was in it for the boobs. Unfortunately the show censored the good bits, but my imagination ran wild. Back to the ride. They all go on the ride, while I wait like an ashat. They get back, and they are smiling ear to faking ear. I inquire. They inform me that Playboy model Holly Madison was ushered onto the ride with them. She had been there for most of the day, and was obviously escorted to the front as celebrities are. They happened to be on the boat, and stopped other people getting on so Holly could ride. My faking jaw drops. I cold met my biggest celebrity crush, and missed it, because I was too manly to go on It's a Small World. TLDR, my 1:1,000,000 sucked. Cold met a Playboy model by going on It's a Small World at Disneyland, but didn't because I'm manly 12-year-old. The year was 2004. The elementary school I went to held a carnival annually. The main attraction of the carnival was the raffle, where kids would urge their parents to buy hundreds of tickets so they could gamble on winning all sorts of expensive toys, like the Nintendo Wii or the hottest new Lego set. The main attraction of the raffle in 2004 was the brand new, state-of-the-art iPod Classic. Remember the chunky one with the scroll wheel, 2 colors on the display, and a whopping storage size of 16 GB? At the time, it was the hottest item in the raffle. Some of the kids from wealthier families put up to 100 tickets in the iPod raffle box. My parents, not being the materialistic type, bought me 10 tickets. So I put 3 tickets in the iPod box and crossed my fingers. Sure enough, I was the winner that year. The odds were roughly 1/1,000. But that's not where the story ends. The following year, I heard that the new iPod mini would be up for raffle. I actually had a plan for what to do with the second one the day before the carnival. I decided that, if I won another one, I would give it to my brother. The rich kids doubled down with raffle tickets on the iPod. I once again put in just 3 tickets. Needless to say, I thought it was a joke when they drew my name again. Still one of the most ridiculously lucky experiences in my life. My 4th grade teacher joked to my parents that she wanted to take me to Vegas. I'm not much of a gambler now, though. 2 1/1,000 situations equals a 1/1,000,000 situation. So I'm pretty sure this fits here. TLDR, I won an iPod in a raffle 2 years in a row off only a few tickets, each time with odds of about 1/1,000,000. Normally you inherit approximate 25% of your DNA from each grandparent. That ends up being around about 1800 centimorgans from each of your 4 grandparents. This number can vary by a couple hundred in either direction. My daughter did an ancestry DNA test, and so did her father's entire family, and everything checks out. Nothing weird. Only, my daughter got 3000-ish centimeters from her paternal grandpa, and only 600-ish from her paternal grandma. Uploaded everyone into GEDmatch to compare, and check for errors or incest, or whatever, anything to explain it. Had genealogists and geneticists look too. Everything checks out. It's a super extreme outlier situation. A couple guys in a FB group I joined to learn more, did the math, and estimated there's like a 1 in 4 million chance of that happening. In my Google searches, I can't find record of it ever happening to anyone who's ever tested. For perspective, my daughter shares twice as much DNA with her grandpa than she does with her half-sister. She also shares more DNA with her cousin than she does her grandmother. It has a snowball effect too. She shares an abnormal amount of DNA with relatives of her grandparents. So in the future generations, if someone were to try to solve a DNA mystery, they'd be completely thrown off by these wild numbers. For example, when passing down genes to her own child, her child would likely share 1500 centimeters with my daughter grandpa, which is in the range for grandparent, not great grandparent as would be the case. And she would pass down only 300 from her grandma, which is out of range for great grandma. TLDR, my daughter's father passed on to her a really uneven amount of grandparent genes to her. I had a seizure when I was 15 and was put on an anti-epileptic and almost instantly was thrown into a psychotic episode, which is extremely rare side effect of the medication I was taking, but they decided to try another one just in case. It eased for a hit, I was thrown right back into one. Then they tried me on another one, because that was also a side effect of that medication. It still didn't go away. Eventually they just diagnosed me as schizoaffective and medication barely helped. It just basically made it so I could function relatively normally. I was also eventually switched to a different medication for a reason not related to insanity, but I was still off my rocker. I ended up switching to a different neurologist who said my original is stupid due to the fact that you're not supposed to put someone on medication for seizures until they've had at least 2 and my EEGs were all normal. He took me off of it and I was perfectly sane again. It just so happened that 4 different medications in a row all caused me to have psychotic episodes. I've been absolutely fine for 2 years now. I have several non-life-threatening health problems. While they are not 1 in a million rare, in combination, are rare, and the common pattern is that there is no cure for any of them. Modern medicine just says yeah, we don't know what causes it and how to cure it. I have Hashimoto's disease, started at 23 years old, where my immune system rejects my thyroid gland and attacks it. No cure, just daily thyroid hormones. My thyroid function will continue to deteriorate. I have alopecia areata, started at 20 years old, a disease where my immune system attacks my hair follicles, leaving me completely bald all over my body. No hair, beard, eyebrows, eyelashes, no hair anywhere. No cure available, no treatment available. It is just what it is. I have pulsatile tinnitus in one ear, where I basically hear my blood pumping through, whooshing sound, all day every day, which is very annoying. Started at 32 years old. No cure, no treatment, just what it is. I have IBS. Basically my bowels don't work right and doctors eliminated all possible systemic causes and came up empty. So the diagnosis means we don't know what is wrong with you. I have anhedonia and the root cause is unknown. I stopped enjoying things that normal adults like, but I'm not depressed. I just have muted emotions. I don't feel happy about anything. I cut contact with friends because I don't really like spending time with anyone, yet I don't feel lonely. I don't get anything from watching the sunset. I don't have a desire to travel. No desire to experience new things. I eat to be not hungry. No desire to do anything really, but I'm not unhappy or depressed. I'm just content. It is just weird. You won $1 billion. That's cool. Your mother died. That's sad. Tried 5 different doctors and tried several medications and none of them helped. Most made it worse. Made me depressed temporarily. I have unexplained painful pins and needle sensations all over my body when I get heated. People with manuscript disease have this, but I'm cleared for manuscript. They don't know what causes it. There are more stuff. Whenever I have a health problem and go to the doctor, I'm first met with confusion, then tests, then more tests, then diagnosis, then retraction of diagnosis, then another diagnosis, and we don't know what causes it, and there is no cure. It has become a common trope in my life. There have probably been a few freak occurrences in my life that I could label as 1 in 1 million, but it's easier to talk about physical conditions as most redditors are doing. When I was 4 I got into a bit of trouble, a little accident per se, which resulted in having a little stick being lodged in my eye. The optic nerve was completely severed, signaling the end of sight in my left eye. Only thing that pisses me off is that I didn't even get a cool scar from it. Either way, despite the unusually of 4-year-olds getting into major accidents, the big bump came after I had a small operation to try and fix any problems. I was diagnosed with a condition called sympathetic ophthalmia, which is a really confusing condition, basically where your right tends to have a sort of connected relationship with the left, where it tries to heal it if it gets injured, God knows how. However, because the body is not very good at healing nerve damage, it often ends up basically injuring itself trying to make the other one better. Pretty much you lose one eye, the other gets depressed and dies with it. Not great, because being blind can be kinda inconvenient. Anyways, this condition itself is epidemiological, present in roughly 0.01% of people who have serious eye injuries in only one eye. About 1 in 10,000 in a very specific group. Wouldn't be surprised if that already adds up to about 1 in a 1 million. Certainly don't see 1% of the population with one eye. But then the even weirder part comes after. Sympathetic ophthalmia is usually a pretty darn serious issue because there's a world of difference between one eye and no eyes, and that's exactly what that leads to. Usually the only way to deal with this is by either enucleation, taking out the injured eye completely, which means there's no connection left between the two naturally, or evisceration, which means just taking out most of it. Probably not 1 in a million, but about 10 years ago, when I was a wee lad, I was with my family on a road trip. My parents ended up taking a wrong turn and getting lost. They found a mall though, and everyone decided that we'd go inside, eat lunch, and figure out where we were. We went to the food court. Right next to it, there was an arcade machine I had never seen before. It was called Stackers. I figured it was just another random game though, and didn't think much of it at the time. So my family and I all split up to all of the different fast food places to pick up our food, and by coincidence, I arrived back at our table first with my lunch and started eating. While I was waiting for everyone else, this random middle-aged lady walked up to that Stackers machine and started playing. With nothing else to do, I watched from afar. I remember being absolutely amazed at how good she was. Every single attempt she made on the machine, she got to the final level before the major prize. At the time, I didn't know about how rigged those machines were, so I was just blown away. I remember thinking to myself, there's no way I'll ever be that good. The woman played one last round and again, failed on the last level. She would have played again, but her husband showed up, seemingly irritated at seeing his wife blowing a bunch of money on a video game, and had to physically drag her away from the machine. She kicked up a fuss the whole way, but they left the food court. Still waiting for my family, I looked down at the spare change I had in my hand after buying lunch, and found enough there for exactly one round at the game. Surely my parents wouldn't mind, I thought to myself. They probably wouldn't even notice that I spent their spare change on the game, and I'd be back before they even realized. Determined, I stood up, walked over to the machine, put in all the money I had left, and played my first ever Stackers game. The PSP I won that day is in my hand right now, 10 years later as I write this. I can't even imagine how my childhood would have turned out without the hundreds of hours I spent on that thing over the years. And it had all come down to a bunch of coincidences. If my parents hadn't gotten lost, if we didn't find that mall, if that lady's husband had shown up 30 seconds later, if the line at R&W had been longer. Crazy how life works sometimes. I have never lost a Stackers game. I learned that I was comprehensively poisoned in 2018, and by that point, I had lost 25 pounds and under 6 months was below 80 pounds and dropping. My doctor ordered some supportive therapies, but said there is nothing else they can do. In the next 3 months, I lost another 57 lbs. In under a year, I lost my vision almost entirely, my hair fell out, my balance had disappeared, my ability to process thoughts had diminished to almost nothing, my skin erupted in lesions, my head / teeth / joints / bones / kidneys / chest constantly felt like someone had poured acid in them, skin fell off the bottoms of my feet and hands, my stomach had stopped digesting food. My facial expressions and speech were paralyzed, and I was, and still mostly am entirely unrecognizable to even my family. My entire body continued to deteriorate, dropping below 50 pounds at the lowest, and my life was literally an hour to hour job for months. By November 2018, my weight and condition had started to improve. In December 2018, my organs including kidneys started to work again. As of February 2019, I'm 90 pounds and still processing that I survived something statistically impossible and that I was absolutely not intended to. As of early January 2019, I'm participating in the criminal justice system as an attempted murder victim in an open criminal investigation. When I was around 3 years old, this weird symptom started. I would wake up screaming and crying in pain, that my legs hurt and sometimes I couldn't even walk. Then the next day, the pain would magically disappear, and I was back to walking and running around like normal. This would go on for a few months, until it became more persistent. My parents started bringing me to doctors, to see what was going on. They brought me to like 6 or 7 doctors, some took MRIs of my legs, and none of them had a definitive answer. Apparently, a common question from the docs was, "Are you sure he's not faking it?" And my parents would reply, "WTF, no, he's 3 years old, why would he do that?" This went on for months. No doctor had an answer. Finally, one children's pediatric doc lit up like a light bulb. "I know exactly what it is. He has Legg-Perthes disease. Very rare and mostly males that get it. Basically this disease means that the ball joints of my hip bone were losing blood flow and starting to disintegrate. So when I would go to walk, putting pressure on the rotting pelvis joints would cause me extreme agony." Then began therapy. If you've ever seen Forrest Gump with his leg braces, that is exactly what I wore for about 4 years until my hips healed up. Doc said we are lucky if I went untreated for but 1 or 2 more months. I would have lost all function in both legs and be a paraplegic right now. Normally I don't share this kind of stuff, but I've literally had countless people tell me I'm different because of my story. Maybe someone will read this and share it with someone in a similar situation, and it will give them hope. I became a teen parent at age 18 with a girl, my age, who already had a 2-year-old. My son arrived only 15 months after I graduated high school. I was a young student. In the time since then, I've worked a full-time job and gone to college full-time while doing my best to be a father as well. I haven't had a day of unemployment since leaving high school. A few of those early, entry-level jobs sucked the life out of me, but I never let myself quit. My weeks in the first few years consisted of working 40 to 60 hours/week, taking as much overtime as I could, since I was only making $8 an hour and the sole provider of a family of 4, living on our own, income-based housing. Between work shifts, I would do my best to schedule a full course load. I almost always had 12 plus credit hours each semester, 4 classes. Somehow, I managed to get all my coursework done in between. We couldn't afford internet, so I would often drive to a McDonald's or other fast food place for the Wi-Fi after the college library was closed. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. My son is now 10 years old, and I'm the proud recipient of an MBA degree from a pretty good school. I bought my first home in 2013, made some strategic improvements with my savings and flipped it. Now I live in my dream home. I have a white-collar job at a company I love, doing work that I enjoy. I coach my son's wrestling and football teams and we spend the evenings after practice playing games and doing his homework. He's an incredible kid and I wouldn't be half the man I'm today if he hadn't arrived so early. TLDR, I became a teen parent, but am now a member of the upper middle class 10 years later. The past 4 months have been this for me. Breast cysts, breast tumors, and basal cell skin cancer all run in my family. It used to be 35 was when you started getting checked for these things, so I asked about it at my physical last year. She said the age to get mammograms even with my history is 40 unless you feel a lump. She felt a lump. Doctor's office faked up and didn't get me in for the emergency mammogram for 2 weeks. Cyst burst during that time and I was in extreme pain. Got the mammogram, no more cyst, but they could see a bruise on the tissue where it was. Instead, on the same breast in a different location, they found a tumor. Had to get it biopsied. Biopsy day was the same day I had my dermatologist appointment to give my skin a checkup, so I had to cancel. Biopsy came back good. Just a fiber tumor. Dermatology appointment 2 weeks after initial appointment set. Everything looks great, but I have a freckle on same breast that's on the bra line. I hate it because every now and then the bra rubs it raw. They said it looks fine, but if I hate it let's remove it. Biopsy says basal cell carcinoma. They are shocked. Totally didn't look like it. Because of my age and location they send me to their big wig downtown. Get to that appointment. It's apparently an extremely rare thing called pincus type. Pincus type has been argued about in the dermatology world a lot in the past 5 years. Extremely rare, grows fast and deep, but from the research I've read there's no known instance of cancer from it. They are concerned, since the growth had been there 10 years they will have to scrape a lot. Got it all off in the first scrape. Easy as pie. Turns out my mother and grandfather had the same type removed from their bodies. I'd like to think we'll be in a medical journal. Both of my aunts on that side have been for their own really faked up and weird body sheet. This happened during the 1989 earthquake in the SF Bay Area. I had season tickets to the Giants that year, and they headed to the World Series with the A's in the Battle of the Bay. At that time I worked at a big laboratory. I had my own small office with no windows and my desk faced the door with 5 huge file cabinets against the wall right behind my desk. I was never one to leave work on time at 5 p.m. I would always leave about a quarter after. Since I had series tickets, I was able to get tickets to the World Series. I snuck out of work early so that I could make it to the game with my boss's blessings. The earthquake hit at 5:04 p.m. while I was walking in the parking lot to Candlestick Park. Being outside, I didn't think it was that bad of an earthquake until I made it inside the park and noticed the big screen was black and the electricity was knocked out, so I turned on my Sony Watchman to see that it was much bigger with the Bay Bridge broken. The laboratory I worked at wasn't up to earthquake standards, and it wasn't until about 2 months later when I was allowed to enter my work wearing a hard hat to gather some files that I noticed that all of the file cabinets had crashed down onto my desk, breaking it in half. If I didn't go to the World Series, I would have been dead. On another interesting note, my sister began the first day of her job as a 911 operator in a city in the East Bay on that same day. Her shift started at 5 p.m. The earthquake started 4 minutes later. What a way to break into that job. 2 years ago I was carrying a box and got severely winded. After a few hours of pestering from my coworkers and girlfriend, I agreed to go see a doctor. By then, I felt fine and almost went home, but stuck it out thinking I had walking pneumonia or something at most. Turns out it was a fungal lung infection called cryptococcosis. The actual infection isn't that rare, it kills tons of people every year. The things that make my case extremely rare are, it's supposed to only infect people with an immune system issue, mine is fine. It's extremely rare to get this if you don't have HIV, sarcoidosis, something along those lines. The progression in my case was severe. My lungs were full of nodules and cavities. The look of horror and shock that I wasn't immobilized and miserable on every doctor and nurse's face over the next couple of years never stopped being terrifying. I've compared my CTs to other cases I've found online and the difference is striking. It never progressed beyond my lungs. If this fungus gets to your brain, it causes meningitis, and your mortality rate goes up to something like 30%. Since I'd apparently had it without knowing for a long time, this was shocking to my doctors as well. I spent a month in the hospital on $10,000 dose daily fourth meds, and then another year and a half on strong oral meds that messed my liver up. I'm being studied by a group at NI to see if something in my genetic background explains why I didn't die. I have a significant amount of scar tissue in my lungs, but it's only noticeable when it's hot and humid out or when I'm working out. I gained maybe 20 pounds, lost some muscle mass in the hospital, and picked up a good amount of medical debt from all the cord scans and lumbar punctures, but otherwise, I don't think about it much anymore.